using tools like recipes and using tools like our closing reports to communicate every little thing.
Yeah.
And I'm making notes all service long. Bass is overcooked. Bass is undercooked. They're pressing the bass too hard. The sauce isn't green enough. Whatever it is, right? My notes, I know these guys hate it when they see my closing report after I'm here on a Tuesday or whatever it is, because my notes are so long, but I'm trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that there's no confusion, because I remember being that cook.
Yeah.
And I remember being frustrated like that cook. And so when that cook confided in me that they were at the point that they were ready to walk out of frustration, I was like, I have to do whatever I can to really try and clean this up. And moving forward for me, always make that something that I'm adamant about.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, man. I feel like I've been trying to get you on for since we started.
I know. I feel like the Bradley Cooper smart list. Like we're at the 100th episode. I finally get the invite.
Ironically, you live like 10 minutes from me, and we both don't live in the city, but somehow we made it happen.
Yeah. Well, you were able to make my deal. So
yeah. Thanks for letting us use Loring Place. This is awesome.
Good to have you.
Where are you working today?
Here, and then going to Grey One right after to expedite.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Again. Do you come to Loring Place like every?
I do. Monday and Friday at Grey Wind, Tuesday and Thursday at Loring Place, and then Wednesdays up in the air.
Oh, gotcha.
Kind of depends on who's busiest and who needs the most help.
So, you were my boss 22 years ago, I think.
Hate that word.
22 years ago?
Something like that.
Yeah, like over 2 decades ago. It's crazy. It's so long ago for Floyd. Obviously, it's okay. I want to talk about Floyd today a little bit. So you now have been, you were like just about to go do your own thing, when I was a punk kid, working at Tabla when you were the CDC. This is a loaded question, but like, what's different about restaurants today than 20 years ago when you were in it in the early days?
I think everything in a lot of ways. I don't know if we're going to go down a rabbit hole, but I think so much. Obviously the cost structure, but I think between Instagram, TikTok, and everything else out there, I think just like the whole landscape has also changed, and it's more about like what's the hot spot over who's got the most exciting and best food and best service. And I also think in a lot of ways, especially in the city where rents are so high, I think we're probably less likely to take a gamble with the food. Like most of us are going to have the tuna tartare and the black sea bass and the steak and a chicken. And that's a bit of a generalization, but I think when you look at places out in, whether it's a Williamsburg where the rent's lower, or if you go out of the city, like I've had some amazing meals in places like Nashville where, the rent's completely different and the cost structure is completely different. And I think they're able to take a little more risks in terms of saying like, this is what we're serving, like it or not. And here, I think, we're all competing for customers. And yes, there's a ton of customers in New York, but we're all competing. And there's so many restaurants that I think it's a little bit harder to take too many risks. It's more calculated risks, if anything.
Yeah, it's definitely a crowded space. That's for sure. The rents in New York, I imagine they're probably the same as like San Francisco or LA, maybe not. But like, when you're paying $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 a month, it's tough, man. Are the diners different, you think?
I think no. In some respects, I guess you could probably argue that customers' expectations are maybe a little greater today. I think, obviously, again, because of Instagram and TikTok, where there's so many customers that are more consumed with what does it look like that they're consuming versus what are they consuming. But I think, the education level, the excitement over eating, I think all of that is still really high, and especially in New York, like one of the best things about New York is that food is something everybody's excited about. I just think it's gotten to the point where it's so difficult. The competition, as you said, is, there's so much, it's so high. Staffing is a challenge. The level of employee you find today is very different than when we were cooking. I remember starting out 1995, and I was like, I didn't know anything. I literally started as a prep cook, and I was working my way up, and I was at Union Square Cafe, and I was working on the line at one point, and I had on my left a guy who had been executive chef for like 5 years and just wanted to take a step back. And he was working as a grill cook. And on my right, I had a former sous chef from like a 3-star restaurant that again just wanted to be a line cook for a while. They didn't want to be a sous chef anymore. The executive sous chef was like again somebody who would be an executive chef of a huge company today. I mean, like that level was so high.
Yeah.
And it was amazing for me. I learned so much through that. I had incredible mentors and teachers. And I think now there's certainly still a lot of cooks, and we're talking mainly about cooks, not about front of the house, but we're talking about a lot of cooks that are still excited and passionate about food, but I think less so than when we were starting out. And it was kind of like you were all sort of racing against each other to be better than each other and to know more than each other.
Yeah.
And there was this friendly but very strong, healthy competition amongst all of us.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case today. And I think in some kitchens for sure. But again, the competition's so great that the kitchens that have that is minimal. Whereas when we were cooking, I mean, you think about your time at Cafe Gray, think back about the guys that you were working next to and the different cooks and the level of those cooks. And I know some of them. So like,
yeah,
really, really talented.
Yeah, it's just, definitely a different caliber. I mean, I'm just thinking like even in Belay, Tosi was there and Ever Rich and PJ Kalapa and Jess and Todd. And,
yep.
And every single person there, went on to, I wonder if it's actually less about not as many as there is just so many more restaurants that are good restaurants.
Yeah.
There's just way more talent now. So like there's probably, there might be the same amount of cooks like that, but there's so many places to go.
Exactly, spread out more.
Yeah, and it didn't. You know what I found interesting? I was just thinking about this. Is that when I started cooking, probably when you started cooking, the idea wasn't, I want to do this because I want to be, I want to have a successful business. Just never even thought about that. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and so that I can have 5 of these and then I can, make tons of money. It was like, I want to be the best chef in the world, and that's why that's why you start. And probably just because you didn't even think that was an opportunity. It's just like, I'll do this, I'll grind this out. And then eventually in a decade, I'll be a sous chef. And after that, eventually I'll be a chef. And then you didn't think far enough along, like, oh, wait a second, I'll be 70 and, but now it's you see this clear path, like, oh yeah, I could actually, I could start something much sooner and make money. And I don't necessarily need to, need to go as deep as you used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of respects, there's a fine line between how much we've fast tracked that sort of education or working education of a cook, and at the same token, how slow it was for us growing up. Like, I think back to the amount of people that I knew that had worked at all these amazing restaurants, and they'd spent so much time, and again, you're putting yourself on the line. You're really putting a lot of wear and tear on your body. So by the time you've been doing this for 10 years, you're already beat up. And now you're going to start that next step of your career where you're going to even require more of yourself. So I think there's a balance between it being too hard and too long versus too easy and not getting the experience that you need.
Yeah. You've obviously had your restaurants for a while now. And before that, you also worked for some great chefs, John George and Colicchio and Floyd, and at Union Square Cafe. What did you take away from them?
I think I took something away from each of them. And I think they all individually and collectively helped me become who I am as a chef, as a leader, as a person. I think back to the Union Square days. I think it really, it gave me that, ignited that fire to want to do this. Like I was so, again, I was, side by side with all these other cooks that were so excited by food, and we talk about food, that ignited this fire. Like I couldn't stop reading and learning and listening and talking.
Why did you go to a restaurant?
I went to Syracuse, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up being interested in nutrition, and that kind of led me to this food service management. And through that, I'd met Danny Meyer, and I went and did a summer internship at Union Square Cafe. And I came back from that like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. Didn't think I was going to cook at all. Thought I was going to do front of the house, but wanted to learn a little about the back of the house, learn about the kitchen, what goes on, so that if I own something someday, I can at least kind of speak the language, So I went back after I graduated, and I was working in the front of the house, and on my days off, I was hanging out in the kitchen just to learn a little bit. One day they offered me a job as a prep cook, and I was like, okay, put my foot in and let's get started. And so I think that really helped to excite me and show me that there was something really cool about cooking. And then, left there, went to work with Floyd at Tabla.
How did that happen?
He was working out of Union Square Cafe, probably about a year leading up to opening Tabla. And we just kind of hit it off. And one day he was like, if you want to come work with me, I said, hell yeah. This is complete. I'd been there for about 3 years, 2.5 years at that point. And this was, he was doing something incredibly groundbreaking and different. And not many times you can get to learn from somebody like that. And I mean, from him, I think I took away so much in terms of flavor, so much in terms of technique, obviously a ton about spices. I mean, he really was a genius when it came to that.
He was really a technician too.
He was. I mean, you think about your time at Cafe Gray and Boulay, and I mean, those were some pretty technique-driven kitchens, right? And you think about being at Toblin, there's a lot of that same stuff. And I
more so, I think.
I think in some respects, yeah. And I think, look, I mean, Gray Kunz, genius, amazing, right? Boulay, genius. I think I can still picture things of his that I've had, right? I was working for Floyd and yet learning so many of these techniques, learning some of these French techniques. I remember like I didn't know anything. I hadn't gone to culinary school. And I remember he was making, we made this sauce, and it was based off of hollandaise. And I like saddled up next to him and started asking questions about making hollandaise. And he's the one that taught me to make hollandaise. And then we made this other sauce. And like, that was a pretty cool education. So, I mean, in terms of people I learned stuff from, I think he probably had the most impact on my life in so many ways. And then again, just an incredible human being. And I mean, he was there when I got engaged, there when I got married, there when I had my first kid. Like, there's so much of him saying, stop, do this, calm down. And there was just so much life lessons from him. I left working with him after 7+ years, went to go work with Tom Colicchio on this private club project he was consulting on.
Court Club, right?
Court Club, yeah. And I was kind of concerned about being in the private club sector. Certainly not as cool as they are today. You have one on like every corner now.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible opportunity. Spending time with him at Craft and at Gramercy, making a menu and bouncing things off of him and going through all that was again really helped to shape a lot of my visions about how to cook. I think the beneficial part about this was like it was a small restaurant, it was a small crew. We were open breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so there was a lot to do, and we had a ton of events. But I wasn't managing a kitchen of 40, 50 people, and I wasn't in the public limelight, so I didn't have to worry about reviews, which had its positives and negatives. But I think because that, it allowed me to really go through the growing pains of becoming a chef, a leader, and being responsible for a whole kitchen crew and a whole menu or multiple menus, et cetera, and yet kind of like wade into the water slowly.
What's he like to collaborate with?
He was great. I mean, he in a lot of ways, he was kind of like, yeah, sure, no problem, go for it. But it was good talking through things with him, and why would we pair this together? Does this sound too heavy? Does this work? And I think the biggest challenge in a lot of respects was we were doing, Colicchio style, Craft style, Gramercy style food with my inflections, whether it be Tabla or Union Square, but in a private club setting. And so that had its own challenges of like, okay, but where's the berries year round? Where's the turkey club sandwich? And so that actually, for as much as it had its challenges, is actually really good because, again, we're here to, I look at cooking the food that I cook in sort of two lights. One is, what are people going to like? How do I make people happy? And what do I like and what's going to make me happy? If I don't like it, I'm not making it. Like if I can't eat it, there's no point, because then I can never put my stamp of approval, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked at this and I was like, well, turkey club sandwich and Cobb salad. Like I don't want to make that. I want to make this like, roasted chicken or whatever it was. And yet we had to do it because we had to make people happy. And so really applying seasonality, really applying the techniques that Floyd had in terms of what I call the peaks and valleys of food: sweet, sour, salty, spicy, the textures of food. How do you apply those things to a turkey club sandwich and make it really, really good. And so that's what we did. And so I think, again, about 5 years there really taught me a lot in terms of my own style, my own skills, where I needed development, where I needed to learn more. Really taught me a lot about growing a team. And I was lucky enough that through that I had forged some incredible relationships, both with guests and sort of partners of that industry, but also with the staff. And that many of them, when I left and went to go work for Jean-Georges, many of them wanted to come work with me. They liked how I led them. They liked how I ran a kitchen. And so the idea that people would want to come work with me, like I didn't take anybody from Tabla, right?
Yeah.
So the people wanting to come work with me was like, oh wow, I might be decent at this. People actually want to work with me. So I went to go work with Jean-Georges, and I think that was really kind of, I looked at that as like sort of taking a bit of a step back, but it was going to open me up to experience some of those things I felt like I was still missing, whether it was a little more business acumen, which I do think hands down, he is probably one of the best businessmen out there when it comes to being a chef businessman. I mean, he's incredible. And just the
what do you think makes him so incredible?
I think he's very smart. He knows the numbers without like coming off that he knows the numbers. Like he'll just ask you a question and he can drill into it quickly. And he'll, whether it's about labor, about food costs, like he'll drill into it quickly. And yet at the same token, he's not sitting there with an accounting degree. Like he's just, and then whether it's talking about the business deals, like, we had open conversations about business deals, whether it was a cookbook or whether it was, the next hotel deal, what would he ask for? What would he look for? And so some of that really taught me a lot in terms of what I would look for and what I would want to do. And then I think really honing in on the balance of flavor and those last little kind of things that I felt like I needed to touch up on, I think really was like my time with him helped to formulate that.
Yeah.
Greg Brainin, who is his, kind of director of culinary, but he was his corporate chef. I mean, right hand. Like, I mean, I think you spent time with him.
Still is, right?
Yeah. I mean, hands down, probably one of the best chefs in the world. And, he's happy doing what he does. But I mean, there's not I'll still go and eat at their restaurants and I have the food that I know Greg is making, or it's something that he made 10 years ago. Hands down. Like, you can't touch it. I ate at Topping Rose this past summer and I had this dish that was like, I knew it'd be good. And the last little flourish that was on it, I was like, why would you ever put that? And yet it was the best part about it.
Yeah.
And that's him. So again, I think a lot of that really helped to make me kind of feel confident in those next steps. And the next steps for me was going off on my own and opening my own place.
Yeah. 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 It does sound like the Core Club was a great, just like training ground because there's less of the public eye pressure.
And I mean, not to say that, we had an open budget, but food cost was not, we had a good food cost, but food cost was never like top of mind for anybody. So, I got to play with black truffles, white truffles, and foie gras and caviar and experience things that I might not normally at that point in my career.
Yeah.
Like I'd only, used a little bit of truffles and caviar, up until that point. I mean, certainly plenty of foie gras, whether it was Floyd or Tom, but, some of these other things. And then like, I remember we did some huge event and we were using these, I don't remember where it was, but these incredible fish purveyors that were shipping things from all over the world. And we're doing this huge event and it was like all raw bar, but they were spending a ton of money. And so we brought in things that like I'd never heard of. And like we served 5 different kinds of shrimp and langoustines, all set out on this raw bar. Things that I couldn't afford to do.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a raw bar.
Yeah. So
I mean, I will say like there's something also to having to make like a BLT or a club, because you could just make the sandwich, it's bacon, lettuce, tomato, but like the idea of like, okay, what's the perfect way to toast this bread?
Right.
What thickness should the bread be? Like what temp should the tomato be? Like how should I cook the bacon? How long? What kind of bacon? Like because it's so like already a known entity to like do that well. I think that's actually a part of cooking that people undervalue, of just doing things that might actually seem innocuous, but like doing it like as best as possible.
And it goes back to like attention to detail,
Yeah,
and the ingredient driven cooking, right? And so in this case, it was great bread from I don't know, it was Bianquit or Tomcat or Penn d'Avignon, one of those guys. Great bread, toasted perfectly. Good lettuce, not like just a piece of iceberg or whatever. It was like we had good lettuce. We made our own mayo. It was like lemon pepper aioli. I think we made our own bacon. We made a tomato jam. We cooked our turkey slowly. Like we just try to take each part and like impart just a little more flavor into it.
Yeah.
And a little more attention to the details of it. And again, to your point, like that's those things that like we kind of take for granted.
Yeah, you do. And sometimes they're harder,
Yeah.
because everybody knows what to expect and
Right.
they know what it's usually good. So you can also kind of fuck it up if you try the wrong way.
Yeah.
So are there times now when we'll stick to like cooking, where you're doing something and you're reminded of Floyd, for example?
I mean, I don't.
I can't wash rice without thinking of Floyd.
Can't wash rice, can't touch spices. I can't pick up a Kun spoon without like him in my head, and that's kind of weird, but you think about lasting impressions, right? And you like think about how you, maybe a memory or how you see something. I can still remember him carefully holding the saute pan in one hand, holding the spoon in the other hand, just basting a piece of fish, and then tapping his spoon on the counter, and then basting, and then tapping, and then saucing. And like, I can just picture him with that spoon in his hand. And so every time I pick one up, it's a constant reminder of him.
Yeah.
We did at Grey, when we have a chef's counter, it's an 8-seat counter, and we did a couple times last year, we did these special tastings. They always had some kind of theme. And so for 2 months, we did sort of Tabla Floyd inspired meal tasting menu. And it was so incredible to be cooking that food again. So it's hard not to get choked up about, right? But to be cooking that food again and really think about that time with him and like knowing what he'd be saying. And I was fortunate enough that Barca and Justin came to eat it, and seeing the look on their face when they're eating was like, all right, this is what it's worth. Like this is why I do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just too many. I mean, I really also do think that there was, I mean, Tava was almost better for the cooks than the diners. It was like a cook's dream.
Yeah.
Every technique, you're breaking down whole pigs and goats and hanging ducks, and you got different kinds of run ducks. You're grinding up crab. I mean, there's so many techniques that you learn there, and you get to do all of it.
Yeah. I mean, again, I guess when you go back to talking about diners back then versus now, and kitchens back then versus now, like I think the diners certainly appreciated what they were getting, but I think if he was cooking that same food today with a TikTok video and an Instagram video today, he would be one of the most famous chefs in the world because of those techniques, because those things we're doing. You talk about the crab, like grinding lobster heads with butter and then frying them and then making this like stock, or making a lobster consomme that was blue, right? And like all these things that like, it was so educational. Where were you going to learn this?
Yeah. But I feel like that's a pretty evergreen lesson that I know I've done a poor job of in the past. That's pretty much a necessity. Is you have to be able to tell a good story. I think enough people probably just didn't know what was behind the scenes of what they're eating there. But that's also kind of the job of the business,
right?
Is like bringing them into that food, because it's such a story. That food didn't exist, and all they see is what's on the plate, and it's tough because all they can judge is like whatever, a tapioca crusted piece of skate, and they don't, and there's some spice in there, but they don't know that that spice is actually from Southern Goa, where he's from, and like this, like this technique is actually really difficult. They don't know those things.
Yeah.
And I know it seems like a cheat, but it's not. I think the story is important. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, the story should be important. In general, dining out is, sort of falls in two camps, right? One is you're going for an experience, you're going for a celebration, you're going because you really want to eat. And the other one is it's a means to an end. And so the struggle is separating that as the owner, as the chef, as the server, as the manager, separating that experience and knowing when are you just is a means to an end. And you don't really care about the whole story and everything behind it versus somebody that's sitting there and wants to learn and wants to hear about this and wants to know what a rouen duck is and why did you hang it for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And again, there's certainly restaurants that are doing that, right? And they're doing an incredible job of that. But that's like, you're going there for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tasting menu. It's a Michelin star, whatever, right? We weren't. We were just cooking good food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that kind of got lost in
yeah, less so with the bread
translation,
part, but, because it was more approachable. But
yeah,
it is true. I do think that that's probably one of the benefits of social media is that it does help people tell their story more.
Yeah, 100%, and be able to teach a little bit more.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, we're spending a lot of time talking about Floyd, and I hate to say it, but probably most of the people listening to the podcast don't really know who he is.
And they might know about Zema now because of him.
Yeah.
Zema or,
paved the way for a lot of people out there. But, again, you think about, when you talked about Boulay, you talked about Grey Kunz, like there's a lot of people that really had an everlasting impact on the culinary world that are gone. And people today, I remember, somebody came in to eat and I turned to the cooks and I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so. Nobody even knew.
Yeah. I was on the subway. This is not a chef. I was on the subway. I don't remember when this was, but I heard these two young girls talking and one of them said, oh, and Jerry Seinfeld. They're like, who's that? That guy from that Cars and Coffee show. I'm like, what? Are you serious? But it's, they have no context of it.
Right.
And I saw someone else was like, I forget what it was, but my wife sent me some YouTube thing, but then it was like one of those reels, and I went to the next reel, and it was some kids watching Eminem's first album. Like his I forget what song it was, but what's the first album? The Eminem Show or something?
The Marshall Mathers?
Marshall Mathers.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is insane. I'm like, that's Eminem. What are you talking about? That's what happens. We can probably like sprinkle Floyd into like a bunch of the things that we're doing, but I am kind of curious because you were talking about management, and I remember you as a manager being pretty stoic and didn't talk a lot. So when you did, it meant something. So to be honest, we were kind of scared, right? Because like you didn't say much. You'd walk up and then sometimes you wouldn't even say anything, you just walk away. Like, what the fuck is he thinking? Like, is he pissed? But there is a sort of a value to that. And I don't know if that was purposeful or if you sort of, started embracing that more as you did more management, but like, has your management style changed?
No, probably not. I think it's changed in the respect of, I certainly had, I don't want to say temper, but I would get mad. I would get frustrated and obviously from time to time show that, because for me, a lot was riding on the line, right? Like I'm trying to make a career, a name for myself. Yeah. And I think now I'm certainly a little more stoic than ever in that respect. But it's interesting that you say that, because I think one of the things that I've struggled with a lot, and people have complained over the years, like, that I don't say good job enough or something like that. I always feel like I'm saying good job. But one of the things that Floyd had said early on when we did this dinner, I was telling the story in front of Barca, and Floyd's thing was like, he's like, I'm not really going to say good job very often.
Yeah.
I worked for a chef who said good job every night, no matter how good or how bad it was. So it didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so when I say it, I want it to mean something. And I'd heard that, and I said, okay, great, no problem. Hopefully I'll get one day. And I remember making a sauce, and at the end of, this was like during friends and family kind of training, and everybody would gather up and we'd talk through everything. And he's like going through, he's like, in the skate, the mushroom, the maple tamarind sauce, couldn't have made it better myself. And I'm like, that's my good job. And that like stuck with me forever, right? And I would, when I would go to make that would be in the back of my mind. And so it's funny that you say it that way. I think it's more, and this is also one of my big struggles with managers and especially sous chefs. We always talk about like, make sure your communication amongst the team is very, very clean and clear, and B, don't just impart something for the sake of imparting. Like, you have a job. You don't have to show your worth. Show your worth by being involved, by helping out, but don't be somebody that's just doing this for the sake of it. And I remember, I'll leave the names out of this, but I remember walking the line And the sous chef went and said to whoever it was, the risotto's not being made right, and told him how to make it. A few minutes later, and I kind of watched this happen. And I was like, I'll wait for Floyd to come in and I'll ask him. A few minutes later, another sous chef comes like, why are you making it this way? You should make it this way. And then another sous chef. At that point, we're like 5 of us, right? Comes and kind of looks over and probably commented, and that was it. And the cook turns to me, God damn it. Every fucking one of you tells me something different. So I went into the office, I got Floyd, and I said, come deal with this. Come tell everybody how you want this made. And everybody stood around and watched, and the 3 that were wrong just kind of went off into the corner, right? And that was the problem. And not to a fault of his, but to a fault of ours. And this is something I've worked so hard on. And I guess this could be a great plug for Mies, right? Like using tools like recipes and using tools like our closing reports to communicate every little thing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm making notes all service long. Bass is overcooked. Bass is undercooked. They're pressing the bass too hard. The sauce isn't green enough. Whatever it is, right? My notes, I mean, I know these guys hate it when they see my closing report after I'm here on a Tuesday or whatever it is, or on my gray win, because my notes are so long, but I'm trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that there's no confusion, because I remember being that cook.
Yeah.
And I remember being frustrated like that cook. And so when that cook confided in me that they were at the point that they were ready to walk out of frustration, I was like, I have to do whatever I can to really try and clean this up. And moving forward for me, always make that something that I'm adamant about.
Yeah, I remember that happening to me. Not so much a tableau, but happening, and it's just a lot of the impetus for why Mies exists, actually.
Well, it's funny. Like there's another restaurant that one of our sous chefs had been working at prior to here. He went to fill in for a little while because we were delayed, and he came here and he had worked with us at ABC, where we had really detailed recipes. And then he worked for a few other places. He signed on to work with us. We got delayed. He went to work for this other company. And I remember him telling me the story and just being so pissed off and then so thankful that we were using recipes. He was working at this restaurant and he had to make like a spring pea soup or something. And he made it and it was wrong. And the sous chef chewed him out. He's like, I follow the recipe. That recipe is wrong. Why are you following a recipe? That recipe is not even right. Why would you do that?
Yep.
It made him feel like a complete asshole for following a recipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that we don't make mistakes with our recipes, and I haven't told a cook one thing and the other sous chef, like that shit does happen, but we really work on it. And when I heard that about the recipe, I was like, I was aggravated for him.
Yeah.
That as a management team, whether it's our restaurant or somebody else, we're not doing more to support the cook.
Yeah.
And so we've made all of our recipes in grams. Our recipes are very detailed. And I remember working with a cook who was really pissed off about this. And he was like, use the old, what's the saying, teach a man to fit, right? Yeah. And he was upset that he would have to follow a recipe. And I said, look, if you make mayonnaise and it comes out wrong, there's only one reason why.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
Because the recipe's to the gram and the technique's written out. If you don't follow it, it's not coming out right.
Yeah.
And why do you want that frustration that at 5 o'clock I'm telling you your sauce is wrong? Or that you've made a big batch of something and wasted your time and our effort and our money, right? And your effort. And so, again, it's like when you talk about management and you look at, back then to now, we have so many more tools at our disposal. We need to be using them. And that's just something I constantly stress.
Yeah. I think also we weren't taught management skills. It's funny. I have a similar problem and I have to force myself now. I have mechanisms in place for feedback because my wife tells me that I ration my love.
You ration your love?
I don't say often enough, like, hey babe, thanks so much. This is so sweet of you. And there's a book I love called The 1 Minute Manager. And it's like literally that thing.
Yeah.
And one of the premises is catch them doing something right. You're trying to find them doing something right so that you can give praise. You don't want to ever give empty praise, and you always want to praise the effort, not the the outcome. But the more that you give them this sort of you're consistent with giving them this praise. When you don't, then they're like, oh shit, like he always will find me doing the right thing. Even if there's 10 things I did wrong, he'll find the one thing I did and make sure that he tells me. So when I don't hear it, I know that there's something up, and it keeps them motivated. Because obviously, like, if you just feel like you're always doing a terrible job, or you don't know if you're doing a good job or not, it's a pretty shitty place to be in, as any kind of employee.
Yeah. I think that's something that we can all be better at. I also, again, like, I don't remember somebody really, for all the people I worked with, I don't really remember a lot of like, you're doing great.
Never. Yeah.
I got the negative feedback whenever it was there, and it was pretty clear to me if I wasn't doing my job well. And when I got a good job, I felt great about it, and I took it with me, and I wore that on my back for a while, and that helped carry me through. So, I mean, again, I think this is a little bit of like the psychology of everybody's a little bit different, and they are motivated by different things. They need different things, and it is, when you talk about like not really being trained on management, I think working at USHG and working for Danny Meyer, there were certainly plenty of training sessions on how to be a manager, but I think there's a lot that probably was missed in terms of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And really deciphering how to figure out, who needs lots of positive reinforcement, who needs a little bit, who needs to hear the negatives.
Yeah.
I like, for me, I'm at least in terms of my business, I'm pretty clear on when I'm succeeding and when I'm not. I may not know that you hate my guts, but in terms of the business and am I making customers happy and is the food right? That's pretty obvious to me. And so I kind of look at it as like, if you are a member of the team, we're giving feedback whether customers are happy or they're not happy. We're giving feedback of, is the staff happy? Are they frustrated that the schedule's not coming out on time, that they don't have enough shifts or whatever it is? So if you're not doing your job to do those things properly, it should be pretty clear to you. But I'm sure that everybody would say they want more of it and they want more feedback.
Yeah, even if it's not frequent, at the very least, knowing whether you're doing a good job or not. I think that's the worst, is when someone they just don't know, whether they're actually doing a good job or not. It's obviously less so probably in the kitchen, but curious, how old are your kids now?
19 and 16.
You had to think for a second.
Yeah.
How did they change the way that you manage people?
My wife would probably say very differently. I don't think I was winning husband or father of the year awards at any point, but I think, like, again, they certainly motivated me to get up and go to work each day, right? And got to pay for the things that they need. But I think they also, over the past few years, they've really kind of given me a little bit more motivation to try and find ways to be home and to not work so much. Especially now, I think, like, I'm looking back and realizing how much I missed. But I think the thing that probably, at some point, there was a little bit of a shift in that I realized I was, working my ass off, coming home Friday, getting home after work at like, 2 a.m. on a Friday, and being exhausted Saturday morning, but waking up with my kids and now being grumpy and exhausted. And here I am, like, nobody knows who I am. I haven't been there for 5 days. And now I come in complaining just like I probably was complaining on the line. Why is this not cooked properly? Why didn't you do this? Why is your station a mess? And why is the floor a mess? Why haven't you put your toys away? And there was a lot of that, and me just kind of being the asshole on Saturdays and Sundays, and not finding time to slow down and just enjoy life and enjoy them. And so I think at some point I started to realize I can't continue like that, and it's not good for anybody. And again, kind of heard Floyd in the back of my head saying, leave work at home, leave work at work and home at home. And so I think that helped with my patience, that helped with my prioritization of things. In some respects, maybe motivated me to be a little bit better at, communicating and understanding that people got shit going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. Yeah. It's interesting. I learned so much about just behavior from my kids, that because we're all like, we don't really change, and the things that you do as a kid. For example, we because my wife inspires me to watch these things with her. There's this doctor named Dr. Becky something or other, I forget now, but she's great. She's a child psychologist, and there's this premise of, kids have all the emotions and none of the tools to regulate them. So the actions that they take seem crazy to us because they don't know how to regulate their emotions. I mean, a lot of adults don't know how to regulate their emotions.
Yeah.
So the thing that you're trying to figure out is the regulation, right, as opposed to the action. But oftentimes as parents, we might accidentally just scold the emotion, because they're actually like really angry, and what they're doing is hitting their sister, or they're breaking something, or like not listening to you. And the easy thing to do is like, fuck, why are you doing that? Which oftentimes we do. Like, dude, stop being an asshole. But it's because they can't regulate their emotions. But a lot of times people can. And that's helped me a lot because, businesses can sometimes be high stress situations, and team members, when they're in high stress situations, may have a hard time regulating their emotions as well, whether that's like they're nervous or they're scared, whatever it is on the line. I'm sure that happens a lot. And then they take, they screw up. I remember sometimes being like, when it's busy or Floyd is in, or we're like, sometimes I just don't want to fuck up, because he's there, and then you act a certain way. So I think that's helped me a lot, just like being more understanding of when somebody is acting a certain way, even if they're kind of being a dick to me. Their first reaction is like, dude, shut up. But like, well, wait a second, why are they acting this way?
Yeah, again, I'm far from perfect in any of it. I think my youngest, as many children probably today, has been in therapy for a good portion of her life for various things, and I think through some of that, I've learned a lot in terms of her coping mechanisms, her struggles. And there's times similar to what you were kind of saying, like somebody may be acting a certain way, and I'm like, my first inclination would kind of be like, yo, that's not acceptable. But then because of her kind of taking a step back and being like, okay, what could she possibly be feeling right now? What's going on with her? And then at the same token, and she's kind of like too wise for her age, but I remember having a conversation with her at one point about my struggles with somebody else who was struggling at work. And she kind of said to me like, well, that sucks that they're going through that. I go through that a lot, but she's got a job to do. And I think you need to ask her, can she do her job? And if she can't, maybe she needs to find a different job that she can do. And there is again, like through all of this, yes, we're always going to try and make people happy and try and work with people, but this is still a business.
Yeah, it's a business. It's not family.
Yeah. But even family, like, and I remember talking with, Kendra, who's on our team and has been with me forever. I was saying to her something recently. I'm like, you tell your daughter to brush her teeth, and you probably tell her again to brush her teeth. By the third time, you're not being nice about it, right? Like, she's got to go brush her teeth and she got to go to bed. Like, we still have things to do. And so I think towing that line between we got things to do and this is a business, and at the same token, understanding that maybe the drama between two people has some underlying, theme that we need to try and help with.
Yeah. It's actually an interesting element to that sort of philosophy that doctor teaches as well. It's like the action's actually not okay. Whatever the behavior is, that's not okay.
Right.
Can't do that. The emotion is, I think as long as we sort of understand the emotion and acknowledge that, the action, you can always sort of police. Anyway, we'll stop talking about kids. I am curious, like, well, a couple things. One, like, I mean, you're a chef. You're one of the best chefs I've ever worked with. Like, when do you feel, you have now all these businesses that you run, when do you feel just really in sync with what you're doing, like in a flow state right now? I mean, like in a given month, like, is there a time when that you feel most like?
I guess the time that I feel, I don't know if I'd say in sync, but I guess just best about what I'm doing is when, we're cooking. I'm cooking. And I'm receiving that instant gratification of either a guest being happy or myself being happy with something that I did, or a cook next to me saying, thank you for spending that time with me. Like that's why, that's essentially why I do this, right? Like I like cooking food. I like making people happy. I can't physically cook food for the rest of my life in terms of like, I can't be on the line, but I love still being part of it. And so I think like if I'm cooking online and, keeping up with kids half my age, I feel pretty good about it. if I hear some really great comments or feedback from a guest that feels like it's the fruit of the hard labor, then I feel good about it.
Yeah. Do you have like any kind of, I don't know, like framework or process when you're feeling like stuck? Like, how do you get unstuck? There's something you're trying to solve or trying to figure out.
Well, I think food related stuff, I think, again, I talked about him a lot, but I hear Floyd in the back of my head, who was always like, always cook from your heart. And that goes back to my whole like turkey club thing, right? Like he said to me, I remember saying something about having to make something, and he was like, stop, don't do it. And I'm like, what? He's like, you gotta cook from your heart. If you don't feel this, you don't want to do it right now, you got too much on your mind, just stop. You're only gonna put shit on the plate because you're in a shitty mood. And I did. And I came back the next day and I made something, and he was like, this is good. And so I've kind of taken that with me in that same respect. Like if I'm stuck, like just I'm not seeing a menu change, or I'm not seeing a new dish. I kind of like just try and take a step back. And I know that even though there's maybe a deadline, like it'll happen. And, I've been fortunate enough to work with teams that help motivate me. Seth, who you knew very well, when he worked with us, he'd be great in terms of, bouncing things off of. Caitlin, who's worked with us for a long time, she and I will start talking about food, and we really just kind of like we'll riff off each other. And I'll be like completely stuck, or she'll be stuck. Same thing. Start talking about a dish, and could take a completely different direction. But
yeah,
we like found our way out of that. And again, talk about being in sync, like that makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is worth it. In terms of being stuck business wise, I don't know. That's tough. I think the business is incredibly hard these days, that I think, to be honest, I feel like I'm stuck every day. So I'm not sure.
It's tough, man. I mean, on the creative side, it's funny. I feel like time can be the biggest killer of creativity in many ways, unless you're, it's always good to have a constraint. I feel like, like to have some kind of constraint, whether it's money constraint or time constraint or, a resource constraint, because then you have a little bit of like a barrier to work with. So it'll help you, narrow down what you're going to do. So I'm reading Leonardo da Vinci biography right now from Walter Isaacson. And, basically, it took him a very long time to do anything. He would take 6-7 years to finish a painting. Sometimes he wouldn't even finish it. But he was adamant about, like, you don't rush anything. And The Last Supper, I remember specifically, painting on walls is very difficult. Not ideally, like you have to do it basically in a day, because you like wet the plaster and then you paint, and then you just paint it in a day, and then it's done. But his style is very different from that. Like he invented this thing called sfumato, and essentially you have to like do all these layers of painting, and you have to, the way in which he would do every single tiny little brushstroke of layer would be, you would barely even like be able to see the stroke of the brush. And so it took years sometime to do these things, and people would get pissed because, it would take them forever and they wanted it to be done. And, he was adamant, like, like creativity doesn't work on a timeline.
Yeah.
So it might be the only sort of constraint that, it might be the hardest constraint is time. Because money constraint, sure, you can, make something delicious with, tomato and, whatever, some basil and some nuts or something. You don't have to have truffles, but time is tough, especially, you want to eat something, like,
yeah. I mean, it's almost like the construction triangle.
What's that?
I think it's cost, time, and quality.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And sort of the same thing in that, like, they always say you can have one, but not all three.
Yeah. You can have it fast. You can have it cheap, or you can have it good.
And I think, there's times when, whether it's a special event or something that we're working on, then somebody's like, oh, we need a new drink, or we need a new whatever. It's like, okay, I can work on that. But again, for me to cook from my heart, for me to feel good about it, it's got to be something I really want to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, come on. I mean, you could Google smoothies today and you could come up with 5 smoothies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm only going to be able to do 2 or 3. So I want to make them things that are really good and people are going to come back craving, and they're going to talk about them, right? And so out of those 3, what are going to be the things that I need to hit on those? Like maybe one is a sweetie kind of thing, like a chocolate peanut butter kind of thing. One, and I'm using this because it's something that had like just come up. Maybe one is a green one, right? Okay, but now there's so many elements that you could throw into that. Like, does it get pea protein? Does it get soy protein? Does it get vegetable protein? Does it get no protein, right? And so you have all these different factors, and it just takes time. And at least you own your own business. You had your own restaurants as well. There is only so much time in the day, and you have to prioritize. And I think that is something that I'm trying to do more and more today in terms of prioritizing, whether it's prioritizing for a partner, prioritizing for a team, prioritizing for my family. And so that may mean that it takes that much longer to get you your smoothie or your new pizza or your new menu or your, Instagram post or whatever it is. But at least when I know it's done, again, I did it from the heart, I feel good about it. And that's again, as we kind of talk about Floyd, I think those are some of those life lessons I took away from my time with him.
Yeah. It's funny actually every time I think about competing, if you're competing on Iron Chef or one of those shows, I'm like, man, that would suck because there's so many things that benefit from, you want to cure it, you want to slowly marinate something, you want to let it sit overnight. Just even the thought of something like slowly cooking overnight or even just marinating overnight, things like that, you just can't do any of that. You're so limited in what you can. I mean, I don't know all the rules around what you can actually do ahead of time, but I imagine not much.
Nothing.
That's just not a fun way to cook, honestly. Well, you talk about costs and stuck in business. I'm curious. We were talking about this before. I don't get to eat out as much as I used to because not living in the city anymore. But things are fucking expensive now, at least in some places. But in some places, I feel like they're not expensive enough.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the perception of what food should cost today versus what you're charging versus what people actually perceive it should cost?
I think the average person thinks that, at least for our restaurants, that the food is too expensive. And again, I think that's somewhat based on there's tons of competition out there. So it depends on where else are they eating and how does that restaurant do and how are they supported by other partners. But it was interesting. I was listening to, I think it was the podcast with that you had with Todd, who we worked with, and he was talking about food cost. And he was saying how his food cost has come down substantially, but everything else has gone up. And so he's trying to bring his food cost down even more in order to make up for everything that's gone up. And that's the reality. I look at this, I say, how much more can I charge for a pizza or whatever? But the problem is every other cost. I mean, I don't want to get into the numbers too much, but I think, and again, every business out there is a little bit different, but pre-COVID to today, night and day. Our sales are 25% lower today than pre-COVID. Is that we've run our course and we're old news and the food sucks, the service, who knows? I don't believe that. I think again, there's just tons of competition out there. And so people are going to the hot spots and we're not necessarily a new hotspot anymore. So we have more of our regular clientele and we have less people finding out about us because we're not doing tons of press and PR, et cetera. But I also think that people are dining out differently. I think, and on a tangent, but I don't know if you saw Ben Leventhal had posted something that Harold Moore said the other day.
Yeah, I saw that. Right. Don't come at 7:00.
Please don't come at 7:00. You have to come at other times. And I think that's the reality. I mean, we had two guys come in recently all pissed off that the kitchen was closed at 9:15 on a Monday night. It was like ghost town by 9:00.
Yeah.
People aren't eating out late. And again, are they eating out at some of those restaurants late? Yes. There are restaurants that are booming at 9, 10, 11 o'clock. Totally get it. The average neighborhood kind of restaurant, they're not. And so I think, for us, the dining landscape has changed, or the customer dining landscape has changed. I think we're nowhere near as busy as we were. But as you talk about costs, our food costs we're controlling better than ever. Our labor costs we're kind of controlling better than ever. But every other cost is through the roof. Con Ed went from being like $8,000 a month to $14,000 a month. Insurance went from $60,000 a year to $130,000 a year. You name it, right? So we're trying to make up for it, these increases in the food cost. But that's not necessarily fair if you are savvy and you go to the farmer's market and you're like, well, I picked up sugar snap peas at the farmer's market for $6 a pint and they're charging $22 a salad. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, but what went into it?
Yeah.
And that's what's missing.
I've probably gone on this tangent too many times, but you're not, look, we can't change how people think about the cost of food, but you're not paying for the ingredients, because otherwise go make it at home. You're paying for, the environment you get to sit in, and you don't have to clean up afterwards, and you can have the right lighting when you're sitting with your wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend, and people are going to like serve on you. They're going to serve you and they're going to take your plates away and they're going to bring new ones, and you're going to have a nice fork and you're going to have music playing.
And if your kid knocks your glass of wine over and breaks the glass,
yeah,
not only are you not paying for that glass, the physical glass, but you're not paying for another glass of refilled wine.
Right.
I'm giving you that wine
because
it's the hospitable thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And at home, what would you have done? You would have to pour yourself another glass of your wine that you already paid for.
That's right. Yeah, and you have an air conditioned space when it's the summertime, and you have a warm space in the wintertime. And all of those things, all those things go into it. I hate that I'm like a broken record with this, but I always have this analogy of a spa. You go to a spa and you're paying for the pleasure of sitting down in a tub, or just sitting there, maybe like getting, and that's $150, You pay extra for the food, that's another thing you get on top of that, but you're paying for the pleasure of being in this space. And now, should somebody pay $150 to come to a restaurant outside of the food? No, but like there's a cost to just running and operating a space that you get to go to, and you don't have to worry about anything. You just go there and you have the experience that you want to have, and you leave. And sometimes you're not paying to have that really elegant experience with candles or whatever. You're paying because you only have 30 minutes for lunch and you get a salad, and you're not going to go home and make a salad. And you can have something you bring from home, or you can go to, Just Salad and grab something that's going to take you 2 minutes. And then you're going to, be able to go and have a salad with plenty of time to go have a call. And that's what you're paying for too. And I think the experience is a big part of what you pay for. Maybe more so than, just the food and the service. Those things are kind of like
somebody's taking care of you.
Yeah.
I had this discussion with an old regular of ours at one point, and she was complaining about the price of a burger somewhere else. And that led to the price of ours, and ours was like the same, if not $1 less than this other place. And she's like, well, I won't pay more than whatever, it's $27 for the burger. And I'm like, okay, but you realize like we buy beef that we grind ourselves. We buy cheese from the farmer's market. We make our own bacon. We use lettuce from the farmer's market. We buy handmade buns from a local bakery. And I'm going through, we make our own sauce. We pickle our own pickles, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but that's like the max I would pay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but that other place, they're not doing any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't want to pay more. And she's like, no. I'm kind of like arguing about it. And I said, just out of curiosity, how much is your handbag? She's like, stop. I'm like, how much? Finally, she admits it's $4,000.
Yeah.
So $4,000 for the handbag, which you're not consuming. It's something you carry around, but you won't spend $27 or $28 on something that you're consuming, all natural, antibiotic, hormone-free, organic, blah, 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 blah. And again, your iPhone's $1,000, right? Now, it is incredibly important to us, but you're not consuming it. It is, you could get an iPhone for less money.
And, they're a utility, I guess, that you can use frequently. But again, the price point it's relative, but I think they do a better job of explaining why you would do that, because it's not just that you make the pickles in house and you buy this beef from this farm and grind it, and you have that on demand for every person that comes in. You don't have to like have somebody come in, tell you they want a burger, and then you go grind the meat and find the cheese, and like you have to store all that stuff consistently at a temperature, which means you have to pay for a larger one, a space to store it all. And you have to store it in compliance because you have a health department. And all those things are things that go into, having something that somebody can have in a reasonable amount of time, among all the other services.
And God knows when you run out of something, how pissed off somebody will be.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know if there will be a breaking point when, eggs just went up by what? Like they're like $15 a dozen. Do you have an egg pasta on the menu?
Yeah.
Okay. Did that increase in price?
No. Did scrambled eggs increase in price?
But
no.
They should.
They should. But again, it's like I look at it as like, how much am I willing to pay as a customer? Which again, I know that I should be charging more.
Yeah.
But I look at it as like, what's the average customer going to say when they see the price of the egg?
Yeah.
But then I go, I mean, there's
then
a diner.
Cheaper to get scrambled eggs at your restaurant than their house.
Hell yeah! I mean, they don't have to do any of the cleaning.
Yeah.
They don't have to do any of the prep. I mean, like, there's a diner up by us. The price of their pancakes is more than the price of the pancakes at Loring Place. The price of the scrambled eggs is the same as the price.
I think you're just not charging enough, man.
I'm probably not, but again, I'm always on the. I mean, maybe stupidly so. I'm on this hospitable side of the guest, right? And being conscious of the other part is like the last thing I want to do is charge what I probably should and find out that you didn't enjoy it. That's like the nail in the coffin for me, right? Just personally, like if it's one thing if it wasn't super expensive, but if I'm charging what I need to charge and we miss the mark on something, that hurts me.
That's what's difficult, but I can't speak for everybody, but the times that I've had to pay more for something or what I perceived as more, even though it probably was the price they should charge, I was kind of okay with it when it was just a great experience. It's like, that was expensive, but there's a lot of studies done on pricing, and there's one premise that like people should be slightly uncomfortable with the price. So because it is a bargain between the two people, we don't need to go in a tangent anymore about pricing. What I'd love to actually ask you about, just because I haven't really been through it much, is your cookbook, because I'd love to know like the experience of like how did it happen? Like how did you someone come to you and say, hey, do you want to write a cookbook? Or did you decide you want to write a cookbook? And then what was that like experience like to get it from I have this idea to now chasing flavor as a book for everybody?
I mean, I guess it's part of the evolution of a chef these days, right? Like you open a restaurant, then you create a book, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's something like I knew I needed to do as a bit of a marketing tool for myself, for the restaurant. But I've wanted to write something for a long time. Again, you talk about instant gratification when somebody says like, oh, I loved whatever it was, right? Can you give me the recipe? Like that really hits home. Like that makes you feel like you've done something right. And so I wanted to be able to put that on paper and be able to give those recipes out. And I also wanted it to be a little bit educational, not just a list of recipes. I think Colicchio's Think Like a Chef, hands down my favorite book in how it approaches cooking, how it approaches recipe development, how it approaches technique, and how it says, put it all together to make a meal. So I kind of wanted to create something that had a little bit of that educational component. I was really, really fortunate. We kind of started on the process. I have an incredible friend and agent, David Black, who I think you know.
Doesn't he just do everybody's book?
He does everybody's book, yeah.
He's everybody that's got like a
he's everybody's friend. And so he and I had been talking for a while about it, and I got super, super lucky that one night a friend of mine, who at that point I think was the head of HarperCollins, happened to come to dinner here, and I already knew her, and so we were just chatting, but nothing to do with the book. And an editor from HarperCollins, Houghton Mifflin, was dining with her. And at the end, I'm chatting with him, and she's like, I was so blown away by this. I want to do a book with you. I'm like, oh, it's cool. Yeah, we've been talking about it. She's like, no, I know, but no, I really want to do it. I'm
wow.
Like, okay. And
that was it from Loring Place?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said, can I come tomorrow and spend a few hours in the kitchen with you? Okay, I guess so. Sure. Like it's kind of, kind of different, right? And she's like, I just want to kind of see how you approach things. I'm like, well, interestingly, I'm working on two new dishes tomorrow, so perfect day. So we met at the farmer's market, picked up a bunch of things, cool. Came back, and I made 2 dishes, one of which was watermelon, kale, grilled cantaloupe salad. And that went on the menu that week. And she was so blown away by that whole process that literally got a cookbook awesome. Agreement the next week. And so I got really lucky in that I didn't have to farm this out. I didn't have to go through the whole process that you normally have to go through. And then at that point, Dave and I started working on trying to figure out who we would work with for the writing, because I'm not a writer. Nick Fashol, who I think you know as well, he was incredible. He really spearheaded it and really kind of helped me figure out how to get the messages across. And it ended up being something I'm very proud of. It does what I wanted it to do, in that there's great recipes in there, but there's these little sections called takeaways, which are supposed to teach you. And they may teach you a technique. They may teach you like how you can use this one thing 5 different ways. And they may teach you kind of why we did this and how we did this. So it is a little bit, inspired by Think Like a Chef. It has these sort of building blocks of flavors.
And I love the takeaway section.
Yeah. And I think, again, if you like cookbooks and you want to cook, whether you're, a novice or not, I think there's a lot in there that you can take away from it. So it was really an incredible process. Evan Sung, who I know you know very well, did all the photography, and I just think he's
best.
Absolutely incredible. Both as a human being, as a friend, and
also
and as a photographer.
Evan, shout out to Evan, is probably like the most professional diner I know.
Yes.
He should write a book on how to be a diner. He's the best.
I don't want to see his credit card bill.
Well, hopefully, most times he's getting a little bit of a hookup. But all right, we've taken up a ton of your time. This was awesome, man.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm glad we finally did it.
And thanks for letting us use the private dining room at Loring Place. This is PDR1.
PDR1.
I went to the wrong room at first.
Oh.
This is great.
Thank you.